Hello, tonight we've got Bob Fairbrother, author extraordinaire. You've got a first novel out called Project Deadhead. And yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and about the book.
Well, thank you very much. Well, when I started writing this book about 5 years ago, much of what I envisaged seemed, frankly, quite far-fetched and certainly extreme for the UK. But as the recent past has unfolded, my ideas have become, well, frankly, less fanciful, worryingly. But the plot, the story itself, it's a crime thriller set in the near future with a touch of the dystopian about it.
Yeah.
Um, it's got a main protagonist who is DCI McGillivray. Unfortunately, he's had his wife and daughter killed in a break-in by an organised crime boss called Sam Marsh. Now, Marsh has been acquitted, leaving McGillivray to struggle with his grief.
Mm.
Now, McGillivray is under pressure to close a series of seemingly innocent deaths in the town, but they look increasingly questionable, leading him to uncover a plot that threatens to destroy the town.
Mm.
Now, the story turns, and McGillivray finds himself eventually having to ask Marsh for help, the killer of his family. So it's
Mm.
quite the moral dilemma.
Yeah, God, does sound
And
like it.
it poses the question, can he actually choose between the greater good of the town or for his own personal revenge?
Ah, right,
Um,
okay.
but I should say also that and in fact after that the story really kicks in towards I hope quite a satisfying denouement.
Right, brilliant, brilliant. And how did you come up with these characters? Where did you get your inspiration for this novel?
Well, I went on a writing course
Mhm.
a few years ago because I'd written the first draft of this,
Yeah,
and quite frankly, I thought it it's not bad, but it doesn't really seem to match up to the type of books that I aspire to want to write.
right.
So I signed up for this writing course,
Mhm.
and they taught me this skill of taking recognize elements within yourself
Mhm.
and take those elements and then plant them into plant them into
Oh,
plant pots
oh, really? Oh
and
my
then see
God.
them grow. And and because conflict is quite an important element,
Yeah,
apparently in writing,
yeah,
um, it's really helpful to take two conflicting elements of your own personality
yeah.
and pitch them against each other. So I suppose a number of these characters have come from that process
Right, okay.
with with a pinch of me,
Yeah,
both sides of me, both sides of my personality,
yeah,
and then you take all the elements that you pick up through life, through the
yeah,
people you meet,
yeah,
through the literature you read, programs you watch,
yeah,
um, and all those things kind of like a ball rolling, a snowball rolling down the hill. It
yeah.
gathers till you
It
get
does.
something which, as you know,
Yeah,
will come alive and become something in its own right
yeah,
that you almost have no control over.
absolutely. And I've got to be honest, I was reading some of the reviews for your book because obviously it's available in paperback and as a digital download on Amazon, isn't it? Um,
That's right.
and somebody quite rightly has sort of picked out the fact that it's very like noir-esque in its delivery. It's quite dark, and actually your stylization of the cover, I think probably is a really good indicator of what's inside. So it was very striking. I met Bob at the Blandford Literary Festival. You were there on the Friday, weren't you? Um,
That's right.
and it draws you to your book. It's a great cover. I don't know if you've got a copy there. You could just show. Hey, there we go. So this review was saying, it was brilliant. They loved it. In fact, all your reviews point to, the dystopian future. One actually touches same as sorry, it's actually turning out to be quite quite a current affair rather than into the future. Um, but it's about the satellites and the internet get taken over as well, don't they? So that it's been sabotaged. There's no what we nowadays would say convenience. You know, we pick up our phone, everything's there to hand. Well, that's no longer a case in your novel, is it? Um, how do you think you would cope as one of your characters in your novel?
Well, it would be, as you rightly say,
Mm,
well, if I could just rewind, one of the ideas that I got from this,
mm,
oddly enough, came from when I read about children being shipped
mm.
out of the UK just after the Second World War,
All right, okay.
being shipped to Australia and Canada.
Yeah.
And at the time, it really shocked me
Mm,
that the UK government would do something like that.
yeah.
And I was intrigued by the reasons behind it, which have since been well chronicled. In fact, there's been a
Mm,
film made about it as
yeah.
well, or
Yeah.
maybe more. But it was the idea of, well, if in those circumstances, what would the government do? But I
Mm,
thought to myself, oh, what would happen if we put the government under severe pressure? How far would a UK government go,
mm.
and how badly could they potentially treat the citizens of of our nation?
Yeah.
So I had great fun trying to construct a world where an awful lot of pressure would come to bear
Yeah.
on the government and the people that lobby the government behind there.
Mm,
I don't think it's a surprise to say that would include big business
yeah.
and media. So the first idea was, well, we've got climate, and
Mm,
depending on where your political stand is on, or your belief is on
mm,
climate change, I
mm,
think it's reasonable to say that there is some change going on.
yeah.
So I've taken a liberty and have expanded that into the near future where things have got considerably worse.
Yeah.
We've also got we could have a nuclear war,
Mm,
but I've opted for the the more damaging. Well, in some you could consider that a world where the internet and the satellites are destroyed and has basically taken us back to a technological dark age
yeah.
could in the way that we actually live now.
Mm,
And I have to say that I grew up pre-internet,
yeah.
so I feel I would probably cope
Yeah.
quite well with this world,
Mm.
because it would be closer to what I used to live in.
So do
But
you,
having said that, I do see myself as a fully adapted person that is dependent
yeah.
on on the way that we use technology, and the way that we get about,
Yeah.
and the way we use it, and the way we create, and the way we
Mm,
communicate with each other.
yeah.
It's I think it would be very difficult to go back to that. But can you
Yeah.
imagine a world where that's happened?
Yeah. No, see,
Um,
that's what I'm intrigued about because obviously, like yourself, grew up without any of this technology. So do you think that really helped the fact that you can put yourself into your world because you know what it was like without all of that? But obviously, as grown adults and we've grown up as the technologies come out, we've sort of become to rely on it a little bit. But I would presume
well,
that,
we have.
yeah, I would presume that you've found that useful, the fact that you knew what it was like without it, so you could inform your story much better, than somebody
Well, there's
nowadays trying to imagine it.
well, we've got people that are living that have never experienced a world without the internet.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah,
um,
yeah,
to introduce another element to this, which is that the economy has put pressure on the government, and they're struggling to run the country the way that
mm,
they should, and we see services disintegrating. We've seen hints of that more recently,
yeah,
but imagine that, you know, manyfold
mm,
worse,
mm,
and it would get quite uncomfortable. We don't have to look far. We can look at other nations, other countries to
yeah,
see how things have deteriorated when they don't have a particularly effective government, or quite simply there isn't enough money around.
yeah,
So we've and I've played around with the concept of what that might mean in
yeah,
our country, and I envisage personally that the the power will tend to gravitate back towards the cities.
Hmm.
Um, Back in medieval times, when the economic cycle turned, many of the farming community and the outlying population would head for the cities because
Mm.
they deemed it to be a place where there might be hope.
Yeah.
I kind of feel that that's what happens to power in these circumstances. It's power that gets drawn back,
Mm.
and I'll use that awful title, but the elite will
Mm.
tend to have control over the
Yeah.
resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we start to see that the police force starts to get run down. So
Mm.
we find that the provinces, the outlying regions like the Southwest,
Mm.
would find that they're being increasingly left to their own devices.
Yeah.
Now, in this particular world that I've created, this means that uh, more and more people are turning to crime because
Mm.
there isn't anything else.
Yeah.
Basically, opportunity is being taken away,
Mhm.
and more people are turning to crime.
Mm.
And we're seeing that crime leaders are taking greater control of
Mm.
towns. So in my particular town that I'm featuring, we've got our main protagonist, DCI
Mm.
McGillivray. Um, he's got this major problem. He's got a depleted team trying to run a demoralized town that's seen better days, and he's got his own toxic masculinity and grief to work through,
Yeah.
and he's having to deal with this crime boss that's in the town. It's I personally would find living without technology not so bad
Mm.
because I think we do have the ability to adapt and find new ways to solve problems.
Yeah.
But I think that the what would worry me would be the level of crime and the way
Yeah.
that this era of lawlessness would kick in. I think that would be very uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Yeah, and obviously you've brought in quite an interesting dynamic there with your two characters because obviously Marsh, um, I presume it's very the controlling element of the crime syndicate that's going on in that fictional world, as it were. Um, but McGulliver has to actually work with him, doesn't he? So that's really looking at the like or not empathy, that's probably the wrong word, but his grief, he's actually now trying to push that aside, isn't he? Because he's in order to solve the what's going on, he needs to work alongside the crime boss. So those two characters, I mean, I don't know whether you're working on a sequel at the moment, but obviously that sounds like there's an awful lot of potential for those characters to go on into a second or third novel even.
Yes, there definitely is that, and there are an awful lot of surprises,
Mm.
Nat, that
Yeah.
are actually laid out in this story.
Don't give too
In a
much
way,
away.
that's this is the problem, isn't it? I'm kind of itching to say what else happens because
Yeah,
there are
yeah,
some as
but
that
no.
TV program goes, there are big surprises. But but
But
the
you would see your characters going on. This would be in more a sequel or a series of books based around these characters or the central character.
ooh, that would be giving too much away, I think,
Right,
even
okay, yeah, no,
now.
don't say no more.
Uh,
Don't say no more. It's nice
because
to know
other
that they're possibly this world is going to carry on and we're going to see more of it. That's the point I think I'm trying to get.
well the story finishes in a way that it could stand alone, it can move on, and
Yeah,
it's definitely a story that I've enjoyed writing,
yeah, yeah,
and it's
clearly,
a
yeah.
world that I would like to go back to,
Mm.
and I think there are some I've already got about 80,000 words for the second novel,
Oh,
so
fantastic.
it's yeah, so it's and I think but but again, going back to what I was talking about at the beginning,
Mm.
such is the state of the world, the way it's changing. It
Yeah.
doesn't seem some of the ideas that I thought were far-fetched
Mm.
are don't feel quite so now. Um, so I may have to mold some of those ideas for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
next for the next.
push them a bit
And
further.
yes,
Yeah.
you've teased it out to me. There is a possibility of a third as well.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. But that's nice to know because I don't know about yourself, but if I find an author that I love, I'm champing at the bit for the next one. Oh, when's the next one? When's the next one? Because I enjoy the writing style. And I think clearly that is what's going to happen with yourself. People are going to want that second novel. Particularly when uh, the believable characters that you've got, it's great because like you said, you thought it was far-fetched, but actually that news and that world that we're living in is sort of creeping up to what you're writing about. So that does make it believable because it's like, blimey, this is actually happening, or this is so close to happening. So it really does lend itself to the believability of it. So yeah, I think a second novel, I think that sounds fantastic. So yeah, absolutely. What about any sub characters? Got any favourite sub characters in the book that is you're really keen on?
Yes, there's a lad, a teenager
Mm,
called Ash, and um, part of the story does involve him,
right.
and he has his own journey,
Yeah.
his own character arc,
Yeah.
um, which I think is a subline, um, which I've really enjoyed writing.
Yeah.
And I've had a number of people have actually said to me that they quite enjoyed that side of it and thought
Mm.
that there might be potential for me to write in the teenage genre.
Yeah.
So that's something I might look at later
But
on.
but that's the lovely thing about being a writer, isn't it? Is that you get this character that will come in that you think isn't particularly the central lead of the book, but you can see them having their own story, their own range, as it were. So, like the youth, young adult section, that would fit quite nicely into that. But it would lead those young adults going into the more mature novels that will already be there because that character's already in that book. So I think it is a nice to have that door that's can be open to you, and it's something you can just let your mind tick over in the background of that character. So, and if you've had feedback
Absolutely
like
right.
that, I think that's exciting. I do think that's exciting. It was good. We had a couple of young adult writers at the Blandford Literary Festival, and it was fantastic. It would be nice to see more readers of young adult fiction come in as well, so that we can, really introduce that and get you back again to maybe talk about Ash. That sounds pretty cool. Um, with regards to publishing your book, because obviously this is usually something that a lot of people really like to know about. What's your story with regards to the publishing of Project Deadhead? Because, there's so many different routes you can go down. What's your story?
Well, I've got a little bit of background in the book trade.
Hmm.
I I worked in it for a period of my life.
Yeah,
So I was fortunate enough to have a little bit of a background as to the structure within the
yeah,
industry.
yeah,
Um, so um, I I knew that it was obviously going to be important to have an ebook, so
yeah,
I chose to go down the Amazon route.
yeah,
Um, I did look at the 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 possibility of having a printed book with
mm,
Amazon. Um, so I went along to a number of events
mm,
and spoke to authors who were exhibiting their work,
yeah,
and some of them said that they'd used Amazon. And I looked at some of these titles, and no disrespect to Amazon, but I
mm,
just felt, for me personally, I
mm.
felt some of the quality of the design of those
Yeah,
jackets was a
yeah, I
little
know,
bit
I know what you're
subpar for
saying.
what I was looking for,
Yeah, yeah,
and I wasn't too enamored with the some of the quality of the print work either.
mm,
So I decided that well, first of all, I actually wanted to try and get a traditional contract with a publisher.
yeah,
So the way to go is to one of the ways to go is to approach a number of agents
Mm.
who might fit your personal profile of your work.
Yeah.
So I scoured the market and found eight, wrote to
Mm.
them all, sent them the whatever they required
Mm.
on their site, and some of them kindly wrote back to me with some positive supportive words,
Yeah.
but they felt that my work didn't fit their profile at that point in time.
Yeah, it's so
And
difficult, isn't it?
let's face it, Nat, it's a lot to do with style. What's the zeitgeist at this moment in time,
Yeah, yeah,
and
you're right.
what the market wants.
Mm.
And they didn't feel that this worked. I also wrote to a number of smaller independent publishers,
Yeah.
and I got some brilliant replies back. I mean, really, really nice.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they weren't biting.
Yeah.
So. Um, a number of hybrid publishers did offer me contract
Yeah.
where you pay part of the deal to go
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
Having reviewed them,
Yeah.
having looked at the reviews from different people, I
Mm.
found that there was a mixed response. Some thought they were brilliant, some thought they were less so.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, to answer your question, now I decided to take it on my own, and I thought it'd be quite fun to learn the whole process. So
Yeah.
I found a printer.
Hmm.
I found a number of printers, looked at their work, and chose one. And I've been delighted with what they produced, and
Yeah,
it was very exciting.
the
Those
quality of
books
your
up.
book is incredible. It really is, both the artwork and, like you said, the print quality. You know, it really was a fabulous book. So you must be very pleased. And actually, it's probably one of the most normal routes to go down now is to self-publish, because then you keep the control of your product, basically. So yeah, I think that was keen way to go. And I like I say, I like the styling of your book. I
Well,
think
thank
it's
you. It's very
incredible.
kind of you to say so.
Mm, mm.
May I say a few words about the jacket, the
Yeah,
cover?
absolutely. Yeah, please do.
Okay. I also uh, wanted to get the right design.
Mm,
I did try try someone
mhm.
who came out with some quite good work,
Mm.
and they were quite cheap.
Yeah,
Um, but after about a week, I realized it wasn't really quite hitting the spot for me.
yeah.
So I went onto Amazon and
Mm.
looked around the genre that I identified with, that I
Yeah.
thought my work fitted in, and I found um, some jackets that I thought were brilliant.
Mm.
So I found those designers, and I wrote to four of them,
That's brilliant.
and
That's really good.
yeah, and they were tremendous.
Mm.
And I had a really difficult job choosing between them to find the right the right one, because they all would have been great,
Yeah.
but in the end you have to choose one, and I
Mm.
chose um I chose someone from Kid Ethic
Hmm.
in Sussex,
Yeah.
and for about 4 weeks we looked at different designs. He produced four different covers, and I thought every one of them was brilliant, but
Yeah.
I really thought this one really spoke to me.
Mm.
And as you alluded to earlier,
Mm.
this one latches onto the slightly noir feel
Yeah.
of the story. So I'm
Mm.
really pleased with the way that this came out. And and there are such clever little elements that he's introduced into the work.
Mm.
The gentleman's name is Mark Swan, and
Mm.
if anybody that's watching this is looking for a good designer,
Yeah.
I would have no hesitation in recommending
See, that's
Mark.
fantastic.
So
That's brilliant, brilliant detective work on your part, though. That's what I call real research into your product, because obviously your book
thank you.
means so much to you. You write it, as writers, we create these things, and it takes over our life. So to be able to be that passionate about the cover as well, because let's be honest, that's the thing that people see first, and it's what draws people to it. And like I said before, you know, it drew me to your book because of the cover. Um, Very much a fan of the black and white, but I think not just the fact that it is black and white, I think it just really works with your genre and your, you know, yeah, it does. I just think it's perfect, absolutely perfect. So well done. That's the
Thank you.
first time I've heard someone's done that. What you've done
Thank
is find the illustrator. So there you go. There's a tip to novelists out there who haven't actually published yet. Try that route. That's a really good one. Oh, fantastic.
If I
Um,
could share a quick story.
yeah, 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 sure.
I used I used to work for the wholesalers in the
Mm,
country, and there used to be five wholesalers in the UK, but
yeah.
that's now dwindled down to one, and that happens to
Oh,
be Gardner in in Eastbourne in Sussex,
yeah.
and they are the preferred route to Waterstones.
Ah,
So if you're trying to get your books into Waterstones, you have to get your book
mm,
into to Gardner's. And to be able to get your book into Gardeners, you need to have a track record.
mm.
So it's quite difficult to get in there
Yeah,
because as you can imagine, they're going to have the whole world trying to get their books
yeah,
into their warehouse, and they
mm,
can't hold everything. So they
yeah,
have to have some sort of criteria for who they choose.
yeah,
So
yeah.
um, so what I'm hoping to do is to build up track record with this, so that when the second book comes out, I can approach them and
Yeah.
say to them that uh, they can hopefully will take this. But my story is when I was working for them, we would have a monthly meet, and we would go along to a buyers meeting where the buyers, sorry, the stockists
Mm,
would present to us the key titles for the month that were coming up from the big five and
yeah.
also all the other publishers. And it was extraordinary. This is an indication of how there was a period where I think it was Barbara Taylor Bradford at the
Mm.
time had a book out, and it had a particular hat on it. It had a hat, and because this book was brilliant,
Mm.
and the book with a hat sold really well, there was a plethora of other books that came out with hat designs on them. And believe it or not, these are relatively unknown authors or other
Yeah,
authors jumping on that particular hat bandwagon,
yeah,
and they
yeah.
were selling. So
Wow.
a jacket is really important,
Yeah,
but it's also about the elements that make up the jacket as well.
yeah, yeah. Well, you've hit the nail on the head there with that. I think you've done very well. Now talking of your book, your novel, and obviously your socials, do you want to give yourself a shout out and let people know your website and any social media that you've got so people can follow you, find out your story, a bit more about the book. Yeah, give us a shout. Tell us what it is.
Well, if you go to www.bobfairbrother.author.com,
Mhm.
you just remember that. Go to that link. You'll be able to buy if you feel inclined to buy the paperback, you're very happy to.
Yeah,
You're welcome to. And you'll find all my social links are on there with very
that,
easy links to click on and take you through to um, X,
brilliant.
Facebook, Instagram,
Mm,
and LinkedIn.
brilliant.
So,
That's fantastic. Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us this evening. Before you go, though, is there a book that you've read more than once or intend to read again? Is it from any author? Is there anything that you can recommend?
well, it, I would say that there is um, probably three. 1984, I've read three or four times.
Hmm.
Um, there's a book called Fatherland by Robert Harris
Hmm.
that depicts a world that where the Germans have won the Second World War.
Yeah.
And the brilliant thing about that story is that it's actually a crime story set
Mm.
within that background. So that was actually quite an inspiring
Yeah.
concept for me.
Yeah.
But it was a brilliant work of imagination.
Yeah.
And the other one that I've read the book a few times and seen the film is Child 44,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's set
Yeah.
in 1950s Russia,
Yeah.
and it's pretty grim
Mm.
of the way life was then, and
Mm.
how food was so scarce and how the
Yeah.
living in
Yeah.
winter was so
Yeah.
grim. But it was again, it's essentially a crime story wrapped up in this historical fiction,
Yeah.
and I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
But
That. Well, that gives us a really good insight into you as an author and your type of work, because obviously, those books, they fit you sit quite nicely in there, don't you, with Project Deadhead. So that's fantastic. Well, like I say, been lovely to chat to you. And when you get that second novel out, obviously we'll come back and we'll have a chat about that one as well. All right.
Thank you so much, Nat. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for the opportunity to come on and talk about my book. Thank
Yeah,
you.
brilliant. All right. Speak to you very soon. All right. Bye.